a saxophonist, as a musician, I'm really kind of most interested in just kind of accessing as many tools as I can to be creative, to express something that kind of means something for a listener, that maybe can have some emotional content to it, and working with kind of modern technologies or new technologies is another way to do that I found really productive, working with new technologies as a way to kind of work towards a kind of greater sense of creativity or a kind of more personal way of being creative. Just like the saxophone's a tool, computer could be a tool, the microphone could be a tool. So that's sort of how I look at it, just sort of technology as sort of new technology is a kind of different toolkit.
New technologies are pretty close to AI.
Right?
So, what's your relationship with AI?
Not a fan. Do not like it. No, I'm just kidding.
Not a fan. This should be...
I know, I'm in the wrong place.
This should be the way we begin the
it.
documentary.
Yeah. Yes.
This is not my thing.
Yeah.
So, this is about technology, but this is not my thing.
Yes. No.
I'm just joking.
Well, artificial intelligence, it means a lot of different things to different people, and at this point I think it's sort of a pretty prominent part of my everyday life, actually, in a lot of people's lives. When I think about artificial intelligence, I think a lot about one of my mentors who's here today, George Lewis, often talks about artificial intelligence, not so much in terms of a sort of man versus machine binary, but actually very often as being a way to discover kind of in a more specific way what makes us human, which is kind of exciting in a way to me. So that's kind of what gets evoked when I think about artificial intelligence, is sort of the relationship between humans and technology, but also the kind of steps and projects that people are involved with to kind of work with new technologies, computers, artificial intelligence, to get a more kind of precise idea of what it is to be human, actually, which is that resonates with me.
Okay, so this is the first time somebody tells me that during the interviews, that AI helps understanding humanity.
Right.
So, do you believe that in the future a machine could be as expressive as a human being?
Well, boy, I feel like maybe in a way that question is sort of, in some ways, maybe falling into that kind of man versus machine thing, but it's a good question. It's a fair question. I haven't thought about it so much. There's things that computers are really, really good at and much better at than humans, and then there's things that humans seem to be better at than computers. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to talk about better without kind of talking about specific parameters, but it's not something it's not something I worry about very much or spend much time thinking about, if one day a computer will be better at playing the saxophone than me or more creative, because and it's not something that would bother me that much, I don't think, or that would kind of be a cause for concern. If somebody, it's a human making really incredible, special, exciting, inspiring music, that's already really special. And if there's a way to do that, kind of using kind of leaning or prioritizing artificial intelligence, that would be exciting to me too.
Okay. Do you compose?
Yeah, I'm a composer. Yeah.
You are a composer. Are you worried if one day a machine could do your job?
Well, sure. No, it's a good question. I think the sort of historical precedent seems to be that the sort of role of the composer, the job of a composer has evolved over time in relationship to technology anyways. So it's hard for me to imagine sort of the human composer being sort of usurped or replaced by a computer. And I don't know. I mean, we're already in a time period where there's computer applications that can replicate, create a new piece of music in the style of Bach or the style of Haydn very, very convincingly, to the point where people, even experts, have a difficult time knowing if it's written by the original composer or not, or recreate a solo by Dexter Gordon sort of in the style. So I think we're already in a period where the role, the objectives of the composer is starting to shift and evolve in relationship to new technologies, and I think that's probably been the case historically. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's another thing I'm not worried about, and the precedent seems to be that new technologies don't sort of replace composers of music, but they do sort of encourage composers to sort of think more deeply about what they do, what music's for, how they can contribute music that's meaningful to people.
Okay. So you discussed about styles. Styles have rules. Jazz is a style as well, and it has improvisation. It contains improvisation. It's a law. So, do you believe that rules can help you improvise, or are they limiting?
Well, I think they help. Sometimes I talk about think about rules. Sometimes I think about constraints. And it's hard for me to think of any kind of musical improvisation in any style, in or outside of jazz, that doesn't involve a significant set of constraints on some level, whether they be physical or the constraints of the instrument or of kind of amplitude or how loud the music can be. But then there's ones that I think you're talking about that more have to do with sort of the theoretical underpinnings of, you know, the ideas about what makes the music sound good, like what two notes go well together or what kind of combinations of chords go together. So I think all of that really helps. And when I teach courses at a university sort of on subjects of improvisation and kind of the value of constraints and rules, and very often we'll sort of appeal to like the idea of language. Like if you really want to express yourself or express your ideas, it's pretty helpful to have a syntax and grammar and a vocabulary to use so that you can talk in the past tense or talk in the future tense or talk in the present or speak differently to somebody who's much older than you or speak to a child. And without that kind of structure in place and those kind of constraints or rules, it's very difficult, almost impossible to really express an idea of any kind. And I think you could make similar arguments for music in a lot of cases.
One of the main points of discussion in the opening keynote was the sound of freedom.
And that was George, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your professor.
I missed it because I just arrived this morning.
Yes. It was in the program, a very simple it was said very simple in the program, but I would like to know if for you freedom has a sound, and if it has, what is it like? That's philosophical.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's hard for me to answer sort of generally. I can say that, you know, being a saxophonist, I think the saxophonists that I admire the most are people like Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, a few other people, Evan Parker, who was here, might still be here, because they sound, I think they embody, their music sort of embodies the sound of freedom, because it's sort of the sound of a very distinct personality, a very unique personality, an individual. You kind of hear the cultural history and the identity of Charlie Parker in his music, of John Coltrane, of Evan Parker. And as a, you know, to make it more on the technical side, as a saxophonist, I hear the kind of freedom that they have from the technical constraints of the instrument. For all of those three men, I can hear that they've spent an enormous amount of time practicing, working on their craft to sort of move towards a place of greater freedom, rhythmic freedom, melodic freedom, harmonic freedom, timbral freedom. And somebody once told me that sort of when we talk about freedom in music, it's freedom to do what you want, do whatever you want, but it's sort of the freedom to choose your own disciplines, really. That's the sound of freedom to me, is people who have chosen what kind of work they want to do and not just accepted, you know, whatever a received notion of kind of how you're supposed to play the saxophone or how you're supposed to compose music, but really being conceptually free to choose their own disciplines and choose the work that they want to do. And that's the sound of freedom. It's not just doing whatever you want, whenever you want. It's sort of choosing what your craft is going to be and then sort of developing it to sort of aspire to the sound of freedom.